Good morning to all students of CamEd Business School and to everyone who is interested in our school and have been supporting our school. Thank you very much. Now this morning I have a great pleasure to welcome Mr. James Roberts. He's a well-known partner from KPMG, and as you all know, KPMG. So therefore this conversation, because as our dear friend James has always talked to me about, is the fact that we need some sort of basic understanding on what ethics mean, right? Because when we do business, of course, everyone does business for a reason, and that would be profit making. But it's not just that, right? A business, for it to succeed, it has to also be socially responsible, doing some good things for the society. So, but sometimes people get confused. What is exactly business ethics? So, without further ado, James, welcome on board, and please take us through what is your take on the very basic issue. What is business ethics?
Well, thank you very much, Bong, for inviting me today to come and have this conversation. A discussion on business ethics is always an interesting discussion. It's a question that has no answer, although there's no single answer. Business ethics is a very etherish topic. Ethics is something that society uses to regulate our behavior in a very similar way to the way that the law operates, but in a way that is far less defined than a legal system. And within business, that's no different. Business ethics should reflect who you are as a business. It reflects your culture, it reflects the story of your business and who you are as a business. Business ethics covers a variety of topics. It covers matters such as transparency, such as governance. It regulates matters such as culture and the way that your people interact with each other, the way that they behave, and the non-formal side of policy documentation, or the informal side of policy documentation. So business ethics is a very etherish area and a very difficult area to pin down into exactly what it is. I believe that business ethics are fundamentally the way that we interact with each other as business people, the way that we show respect to each other where we don't have to. Nobody regulates the way that you interact with your tuk-tuk driver or your waiter in a restaurant, right, other than your own morality and the way that you were raised by your family and the way that you treat people. And that is ethics, whether it applies to us as individuals or to businesses. The way that CamEd or KPMG work with each other and work with our respective markets, our customers, our staff, and our employees is all a reflection of our business ethics. At KPMG, we have a very strong mantra: healthy, happy, safe. And we believe that that captures our business ethics. We want people at KPMG to be happy at work, to treat each other with respect is part of being happy. To give people a good working environment is a huge part of being happy, of being healthy, and of being safe. There was a huge initiative in Europe when I was working there around health and safety and how we ensure that people don't develop workplace injuries. And that is directly connected to your working environment. And unfortunately, businesses in Europe were not quick enough to adapt to that trend, and it was something that had to become part of law and part of regulation to ensure that people were safe at work and they weren't injured in their workplace. In Asia, we don't have that regulation yet in Cambodia, but it's still something that we believe is very, very important in the way that we engage with our staff in creating a safe work environment for them, so they don't develop bad backs and they don't develop neck pain, and they have adequate breaks to be able to go and eat their lunch in a comfortable environment where they're not sweating and uncomfortable. All of these things form part of business ethics.
Excellent, excellent. So if I heard you correctly, you mentioned a lot of key words, right? Culture, the way you think, the way you interact, how sometimes we talk about, if you want me to respect you, you better start by respecting me first, right? So you want to do things to people and you would expect the same thing.
Exactly.
Sometimes people would just say, well, but we have different understanding, we have different background. What I view as ethical might not be what you view as ethical. So sometimes the personal preference come into play. Do you have any this kind of encounters sometimes, or a lot of times?
a lot of times, and that's where culture and everything else comes into play. There are formal frameworks, and there's a variety of these that sit within business ethics. And quite often businesses will introduce specific policy documents that are designed to reinforce that business's culture and interpretation of what business ethics are. Common things will be around conflict of interest, for example. Many businesses will develop a COI policy that says, whilst you work for this business, you work for this business only. If I'm an investment business, I can't take a payment from you. If I'm an investment business and I represent investors, I can only work for one side of the business. Something that you'll be training the CamEd students on under the ACCA program as part of the auditor independence and the ethics around there. That goes much more broadly in the business environment, and many businesses will introduce COI policies, and conflict of interest is one example therein. But it's a key example. Should I be working or placed in a situation where I could be perceived to be working against my employer? You're a lawyer. If I asked you to sue CamEd, would you take that role on, or would you feel that there would be a perceived conflict of interest there? Not that I would sue CamEd, but because they're a great partner of KPMG. I'm just using that as an example of a potential perceived conflict of interest, and something that should be documented in an employee-employer relationship so that everybody understands this is acceptable, this is not acceptable.
Okay, so see, James, you're coming from the UK, and you came here in the 2000-ish, right? 2006, 7, 8?
Yeah, around there.
So at that time, yes, Cambodia was really enjoying wonderful growth, right? So it was good news for everyone. But again, you coming from a, let's say, non-Asian or Western culture, when you arrived here, how was, what was your first impression? So you would feel like, okay, now suddenly I find myself in this Asian way of doing business, where a lot of compromises must be made. Let's be honest. So from that perspective, from that cultural differentiation perspective, what would you say, such as, if you come to invest in Cambodia or any country in Asia for that matter, you would be expected to make some compromises. Do you see that happening, or do you, what's your take on it?
Absolutely. You should never go into a new country and impose your culture and values. And I've had several conversations with governments around the world about how we do this, with the UK government particularly, around our frequency in imposing our system of government and our values on emerging countries, and the legacy of failure that that's created in that system. It's hugely important that we respect our partners and the culture that we come from, not only from a legal standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint as well. When I first came to Cambodia, Cambodia was a very different country. We were much earlier in the development cycle. Many of the laws and the regulations that we have today were not on the books at that time. And Cambodia has evolved very quickly and developed lots of new legislation, some of which I think is fantastic, some of which I think is less well developed and could be improved. That is part of the development process. And coming from the UK, where you work long hours, you go home when it's dark and you come to work when it's dark. In Cambodia, there was a much more relaxed, much more friendly, much more cordial culture around work, and adapting where you don't expect the people that you work with to adopt all of your systems and values, but you do have to adopt some international values where you are looking to work with international businesses.
And KPMG being the globally recognized brand company, of course you have advised as KPMG, right? You have advised every industry possible, correct?
Correct.
So sometimes you might probably be thinking some of your advice that you have given to local tycoons here, maybe some people would feel like, what is this? that's not how I do business in this country. I paid you a lot of money to get me an advice, and now you give me advice that sounds very westernized. Do you get that feeling sometimes?
Sometimes it's more the other way around. Okay. So we have international businesses that come to Cambodia. And Cambodia, when I first came, was rapidly emerging as a post-conflict country from its recent history, and was still putting today, we're still putting a lot of laws on the books. There was gaps in legislation. There is very commonly within Southeast Asia and within Asia generally, there's the gap between practice and the written form of the legislation. Helping clients to understand that and manage the risks that creates is far more challenging than the opposite side, because we always have to take a client-focused approach. Our advice has to be practical, actionable, and implementable by clients. Otherwise, it's useless. It's a piece of consulting mumbo-jumbo.
That's right. That's right. So yes, I see that when international businesses come here, they already understand, you come with your own background. Now, in the hands of KPMG, you feel very safe. But do you also see growing understanding from the local business people's side, right? So now they come to realize, we have partners from overseas. Now we try to make good business with them. We try to learn from them. So do you see that our understanding of international business ethics has increased?
Both from the private sector and from the government sector. Mm-hmm. The government have rapidly recognized, after the implementation of the anti-corruption law, this is the new landscape and this is the environment that we work within. And they've accepted that international business will not participate in some of the things that are now illegal in Cambodia, that they cannot be involved in. And the compliance environment has changed to reflect that. In terms of local business and how they've adapted, absolutely. There are very few businesses in Cambodia that do not want to access international capital in every industry, because international capital is uniformly cheaper than Cambodian capital, Cambodian source capital. To do that, there is the golden rule. You know the golden rule? He who holds the gold makes the rules. So if you want to raise money from international businesses, regardless of the opportunity that you believe you have, and in Cambodia, opportunity abounds. This is an economy that's highly dynamic with enormous amounts of investment opportunity. To be able to enable those companies to come to Cambodia and to invest in your business, we have to adopt some of their traits.
Sure. Now, James, you mentioned the word compliance, legal compliance, right? And that is interesting because sometimes guess what people say, here I have many laws, and yet the first understanding is that if I do things legally, if I do things according to the law, I should be safe, I should be fine. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you could be doing things legally, but from ethical standpoint, it's very shaky. So what is your view on the relationship between law and ethics? What leads what? Should law lead ethics or should ethics lead law? Because sometimes you get that relationship quite blurred, right?
That is a fascinating and hugely complex question that I am vastly underqualified to answer, but I will share my thoughts as a layman. The relationship, as you say, between law and ethics is a complex one. Should ethics lead law? Should law lead ethics? In my opinion, ethics should lead law. Is something morally right? Is it the right way to do things? Is it to the benefit of society? Then that should drive the conversation around law. Law is fundamentally focused on implementing societal standards and enforcing departures from societal standards. If I steal from my neighbor, I should go to prison and be punished for that and rehabilitated for that before I am allowed back into society.
That's right.
If you take an entirely legal view, the law frequently departs from ethical standards. Because it is really focused on behavior. Is it ethical to deprive somebody of their liberty and lock them up and punish them and go through that process? That's a question that I don't have the answer to. Is it ethical what happened in Europe in the 1930s and 40s? Absolutely not. Was it legally permissible? Germany wrote laws for what they did in the Holocaust, and that's completely unethical and completely unacceptable, and 99.9% of the entire world accepts that today. However, it was legal because Germany wrote the laws to enable that. So should ethics lead law or law lead ethics? I'm a big believer that ethics should lead the law, and the law should implement the societal standards that ethics drive.
And that is very straight to the point, I think, because
I apologize for that.
Earlier, you mentioned the health and safety issue standards, for example. For sure, you might have a law that demands very minimum protection, right? So a law would just say, make sure that your employee has access to water during work time. That's it, for example. But then your company would go even further and say, not just water, we will also offer coffee, we will also offer snacks, we will also offer many things just to make sure that they are happy and that they are also at the same time healthy. So sometimes the law could just regulate here, but your ethical standards are already way above the law. And if that happens, that's great, right?
Exactly.
If it's the other way around, then that's not very great.
Well, this is where the free market comes into play. If you're an employer who only does the bare minimum, the minimum you're required to do by law, ultimately the free market will take your workers away. Your workers will see what your competitors are offering, and they will go. They will not stay with you.
That's right.
And young Cambodians today, and Cambodia is a very obvious example of this, have never had it so good. Working environments are fantastic in general. Businesses are working very hard to attract talent in Cambodia. At KPMG, we have lounges available that the employees can go and relax in. They can play table football, they can sing karaoke, they can do quizzes and social environments. Right now, the workplace is changing globally. Whether that is companies trying to attract employees to come back to the office after COVID, which is a very European problem, or more so in an Asian context, because of the rapidly developing property sector, the buildings that are available, the low cost of buildings in Asia, facilities are fantastic and far beyond what is available in much more established older economies like Europe and North America. Now, in certain cities that's not the case, but generally. So my answer to your question, Virak, is very much, whilst you can provide the bare minimum, the free market economy will always punish you for doing so. The best employees will leave and go to a place where they're treated better, where they get better rewards, and not just financial rewards, where they are given better ethical treatment, where they have a nicer working environment, where they have a better culture, where they have access to appropriate facilities beyond just a bathroom and water.
Now I come across something strange in my head right now. Yes, we do a lot of things to make sure that our employees are well fed, healthy and feel safe at work. Sometimes I read somewhere in the news says, right now if you treat employees too well, they get accustomed to being so nicely treated. The moment you fail, off they go, just like you said, right? So sometimes employers start complaining. Please remember, you work for me. Of course, I try to do as nice as I can be, but please just don't move the moment someone treats you a bit nicer, because please have some loyalty to me. So from that employer perspective, do you think that business ethic should also have limit to ensure that employers have some right to say?
I don't think that there is a limit to ethics. I think you take it as far as you believe is practical, and you should do as much as you can for your employees. And I know that whilst they would not always agree, as partners we always do the best that we can for the employees, whether that's in terms of environment, remuneration, access to training, access to education, all of these things. We want the best for our employees, and we want them to go on and do great things. And we try and create an ecosystem both for our employees and our alumni that reflects that. It's a two-way street. Employees generally, I find, do have quite a lot of loyalty in Cambodia. It's quite hard to get Cambodians even where they're working a lot of overtime and they're doing what they can to get the job done, quite often they won't claim the overtime because they feel the loyalty to the firm and they want the firm to do well and to succeed, and they're proud of being at the firm. And I think that is a reflection of the culture that we've created. You respect me and I'll respect you. I'll respect you and you respect me. And I think that relationship is reciprocated because I think employees generally recognize actually the firm is working very hard to give me the best environment that they can, to give me the best training that they can. And this isn't just a KPMG issue. This is other businesses, other industries in the market that I see this happening in as well. You know, when you look at and you visit the facilities that businesses in Phnom Penh have today, they are world class. And I think many young Cambodians haven't had the experience that some of the older generation have had, but they see that standard. What they see on social media, what they see in movies is now the reality of working in Phnom Penh.
Right, well said. Now, KPMG is very respected. I respect KPMG very much, very deeply.
Thank you very much.
The advice that you have given to all your clients, right, throughout your career in Cambodia, elsewhere in the world, you must have got feedback from your clients, right? So could you pinpoint to me just one or two examples? There's no need to mention names. Where your customers really appreciate the advice that you've given them in terms of raising the business excellence practice and all that. They might come back to you and say, Jan, thank you for telling us to do this because we have greatly benefited from your advice.
So I work in the M&A industry, and whether that's due diligence or raising capital, bringing in strategic partners. So the first part of any project is really evaluating the business, what they're looking to do. If we're looking to raise capital or bring in a strategic partner, we have to understand the business. We have to understand who it is, what the fit is, how the business is valued, and there's a huge amount of work that goes in there. The success of that doesn't come until the end of the project. But I can tell you now, for one business that we raised a significant sum of money for, and we brought in a very strong strategic partner from within Southeast Asia, they were absolutely thrilled at the end of the project because the relationship between the local business and the international player coming in was so strong. Yes, we had spent a lot of time in a locked room with the lawyers drafting documents. We shook hands, we signed the agreements, and then everybody agreed, right, these documents go on the shelf, let's work together to do business successfully because of the fit and the culture between those two businesses, which all comes down to a shared understanding of ethics and a shared understanding of doing business together, and because of the trust that was created through the process.
That brings me to the very last question. Shared understanding of what we aim together, right? So sometimes you have owners complaining sometimes. They say, I want to be as ethical as I should have been. But look, my neighbors are not as ethical. So if you want me to be really, really ethical, you have to present a case. That I believe there is a strong positive relationship between being ethical and being profitable. Because sometimes they say, if I try to be so much very ethical, I lose my competitive advantage, whatever they say, right? So now from your perspective, how do we try to be ethical and at the same time keep being successful, profitable?
This is a very, very simple question, and I'm going to answer it with a question to you. Do you want $1 today or $10 million in a year's time?
The answer is obvious.
The answer is obvious. Not being ethical is a shortcut towards making money. Whether that's by circumventing laws, whether it's breaching a contract or treating employees badly to make money from your employees. Yes, I will make money today, but the future value of my business, my future cash flow from the business will be damaged because the employee that I've treated badly will leave. The customer who I've breached the contract with or failed to completely honor the contract with will no longer work with me. They will no longer buy from me. The world is a huge marketplace. People choose who they trade with. I can make $1 today by stealing or by doing whatever you want or by failing to honor an agreement, breaching the law, etc. But ultimately, that's very short-term thinking, it's not strategic thinking, and it damages the value of your business. Historically, in Cambodia, many years ago, before His Excellency Kongvibol came into the tax office, there were many businesses in Cambodia that didn't pay tax. Those businesses became fundamentally uninvestable because of the liabilities that they had on the balance sheet. Today, we see many more businesses who have followed the law, who have done things properly, who have strong systems of governance. Those businesses are worth huge sums of money, far more than they would have been had they taken the shortcut and made the dollar yesterday rather than the 100 million today. And it really is that simple. And a lot of this comes down to ESG, and particularly the governance component of ESG. How do I run my business in a modern way and a sustainable way? How do I understand and manage my risks? How do I ensure that I'm profitable through good accounting and good financial controls? How do I make sure that I have a good societal impact through my CSR program? All of these things contribute to significantly higher value. To give you a specific example for an industry that is and this is a simplistic example. One of Cambodia's biggest industries is textiles, we agree. Huge numbers of people directly employed, huge numbers of people indirectly employed. Let's say I run a hypothetical factory. I buy my cotton for $5 from a socially responsible source. Somebody from a country in the Far East offers to sell me cotton coming from the unsustainable sources, indigenous communities who have been subject to very poor working conditions, that has been procured unsustainably and disadvantaging people in that community. Yes, I can save $4, but when it comes time for me to sell my goods to my customer, the first thing my customer wants to know in 2023 and beyond is, where did your inputs come from? Are these sustainably sourced? Were they procured responsibly? And if not, they won't buy. There's a very large manufacturing company from the UK who are present in Cambodia. They employ thousands of people. And when I sat down with them in London earlier this year, they were very clear. We will only buy from ethical sources. We can buy cheaper. We know we can buy cheaper. We want to buy responsibly, not because we're nice people. That's part of it. We're ethical people, but it's good business because we can't sell it unless we're responsibly sourced. Our market goes, if we buy unsustainably sourced production inputs, our market for sale goes from the entire world to very few markets where I can sell at very low value. So if you're a good businessman, you want to sell for the best price, profitable, and make the best return possible, you need to be thinking sustainably across your whole supply chain. This is not something that is going away. The use of slave labor, factories in Cambodia have been inspected for many years by the ILO and by various labor organizations around the world. Working conditions in Cambodian factories, in my experience, are generally fantastic. Many of them provide childcare. They have environmental control systems to make sure that the workplaces are comfortable. They feed the workforce, they give them time off. Many of them are treated better than people in my industry, and certainly better than I was treated when I trained. Because it's good business practices, and because consumers and our customers require that in order for us to get the best price. Yes, you can buy something that is sourced unsustainably and you can sell it for 10 cents, but if you want to sell it for $10, it has to be responsible.
And that concludes our conversation today. Thank you very much. So now, if I get from you correctly, ethics means good business. Good business means profit. Thank you very much, James Roberts. He's a senior partner from KPMG, our wonderful partner with CamEd School and other school. As you are well aware, we teach many courses, and one of those courses is business ethics. So thank you again for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure our audience appreciate very much, and not just business school here, CamEd Business School students, but everyone, all of our stakeholders will learn from them. So I hope you will find time to come back.
I would love to. Thank you very much.
Let's keep being ethical. We are leaders in the business. I'm the leader in education. You're the leader in the advisory firm. So thank you again, and hope to see you here again.
Very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.